Joining us now, one of the hardest working people, just period, in show business, was in Frisco covering Big 12 Media Days, now in Vegas working the ESPN broadcast of Summer League and Cooper Flagg's debut, the pride of Louisville volleyball, the one and only ESPN's Katie George. Katie, how the hell are you? Thank you so much for giving us some time today.
Absolutely, guys. I'm doing well. A little tired after you just laid out my travels, but obviously excited to be out in Vegas covering Summer League and seeing some of these draft picks finally get on the court.
Yeah, it had to have been a whirlwind, I'm sure, going back and forth from Frisco to Vegas. Yeah, the time difference there. But what stood out to you last night? I mean, the broadcast was awesome. I know for us here in the Metroplex, we were super hyped to see Cooper Flagg in his debut. What were your big takeaways getting to see him up close in person?
Yeah, that was my first time getting to see him play. You know, I don't cover college basketball, so I hadn't seen him play at Duke. And so I was impressed. I know, I work for a company that is pretty good at overhyping things and, freaking out if something doesn't go to plan, right? Like his debut wasn't as good as he thought. And he was actually very harsh, I thought, in terms of criticizing himself. Post-game he told me, he was like, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't to my standard. I didn't play well. And then when he got to the scrum after the game outside the locker room, he said it was one of the worst performances he felt like he's ever, put on the floor. I think that's probably a bit harsh, but that also speaks to the type of player and kid that this guy is. And I think that bodes well for the Mavericks because he does hold himself to such a high standard. You guys just mentioned he took a lot of shots. That's something that Jason Kidd wants him to do. Yes, he only went 5 of 21, but as you guys know, this is their first time as a group of new players playing alongside one another. I had the Spurs in the second game last night. The Spurs looked so much better than the 76ers because the Spurs played out in the California Classic or the Salt Lake Classic or whatever it is. They had a couple games under their belt. It takes time for all these new pieces to kind of learn how to play off each other alongside one another. So you can't say that a career is going to be made or broken, on one Summer League debut. But I have to tell you, that place last night was jam-packed. There was, an electricity in Thomas and Mack just because everybody wanted to see Cooper Flagg play. It reminded me of when Victor Wembanyama made his debut, Zion Williamson, years back. So there's so much hype around this kid. I was impressed with the way he handled himself overall.
And how about just the way that, there was plenty of Mavericks veterans that were just there to watch, Kyrie Irving, P.J. Washington, guys like that, and they seemed like they were all getting super excited for him when he would make a play. Like, just the dynamic between Cooper Flagg and the veterans on this Mavs team, did you get a feel for what that was like?
Yeah, everybody who is anybody from the Mavs organization was there last night, which I think bodes well and speaks to the culture that they've created and that the older guys wanted to be there to see these young guys play and support them. And Kyrie Irving being there, I thought, was a really big deal. I actually just came back from the gym. I sat down and had a one-on-one conversation with Cooper, and I asked him, I said, it's one thing to get to learn from a legendary player like Kyrie Irving and just the way that he plays the game, but also being able to pick his brain because he's been there. He's been in your shoes. He was the #1 overall draft pick back in 2011. What's that experience like, knowing that you have a guy that you can rely on and lean on who's already done this and he knows the expectation and the notoriety that comes with being the #1 overall pick? And Cooper said, he was like, I'm so excited. He said, he's already had conversations with Kyrie, but he's like, I'm so excited to be able just to spend time with him and see how he goes about his day-to-day. And I think that Kyrie, has been many things throughout his career, and I covered him when he was in Boston, and then certainly, obviously, since he's been with the Mavs. And I have to say that Kyrie seems so much more content and happy as a player and a person within the Mavs organization. And I think that lends itself to him becoming a better leader. And I think that he's going to look at someone like Cooper Flagg and really take him under his wing. And I think that it's going to be a really great partnership for Cooper.
Hey, Katie, when you mentioned you got to sit down with him and talk, was he glad this was all over with, though, the first game out of the way, and all you talked about the hype and things like that, but was there a way that he just kind of said, yeah, I didn't play well, but was there a little bit of relief that it was over with and now he can kind of focus on other things?
Yeah, I have to imagine that there was. He said that the recognition, the notoriety, the fans asking for photos and autographs has been a little bit crazier than he even anticipated. He said he knew it was going to be a lot, but then since arriving in Vegas, he said it's exceeded even what him and his camp were expecting. And, he also said, too, like, from last night, he was like, I was tired, I think. He was like, look, they were having me bring up the ball. You guys mentioned before bringing me on, Jason Kidd wanted to make him uncomfortable. They wanted to put him in uncomfortable situations, bringing the ball up, running point, handling. He said, I haven't done a whole lot of that, so having a guy pick me up 94 feet, he said, I constantly had a body on me at all times. And he said, that's something that I'm going to have to get used to, certainly. But he was like, for my first time out, he said, I think it kind of drained me. You guys also mentioned he played a ton of minutes, which I love. Like, he probably is only going to play a handful of games, maybe even 2. Tomorrow might be his last. Like, run him, see what he can do, push him. And they certainly did that. And so I just thought, I think for him, he wished he would have played better. But this is how it goes, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of find your rhythm. And I think by Saturday, tomorrow afternoon, when he plays against the Spurs, we're going to see even better performance. Do you know who really impressed me? I don't know about you guys. I was pleasantly surprised and really excited with the play from Ryan Nembhard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. I mean, we had got to have him on our station actually earlier in the week. Great person. But to go out there with 21, and obviously, if it weren't for the size, he's probably a first-round pick, in my opinion. But the Mavs might have found one there, Katie, in Ryan Nembhard.
Well, I feel like it kind of flew under the radar, right? The signing, and good on Nico Harrison to get it done as soon as the draft ended, because he went undrafted. But I think he's a steal. And, I was walking past Jason Kidd last night, and I said, gosh, what a get. And Nembhard, I said, I know he's a little bit small. And Jason said, yeah, he's like, I don't mind his size. He's like, because we have plenty of length to cover for him. He's like, we're so big in other positions. I mean, even their summer league team is really long and lengthy. But the guys on the roster are certainly huge. And so, for Kidd to say that, I think Kidd probably sees like a little bit of himself. I know Jason's a little bit bigger, but I think that Kidd probably sees a little bit of himself in Nembhard. And, what was really fun for me is, during the game, I got to talk to Andrew Nembhard, who plays for the Pacers and just come off of, an NBA Finals appearance, and just how excited he was for Ryan and to have that kind of start in that game and finish the way that he did. Like, I just thought he was in total control running the offense and just looked so poised and calm, like he's been doing it all his life. And on that stage, as you guys mentioned, there's definitely nerves. That these games are so overhyped. There's so many people watching. I was really impressed with Ryan.
Hey, Katie, okay, so you were there at the Big 12, the media days for that. I have a question for you. Who are you going to pick after everybody you got to talk to? Just make the pick for who's going to win the Big 12 just for the fact that you got to visit with so many good people.
That's a really hard question to answer because I think there's so many capable teams this year, which is going to make the Big 12 so much fun to watch. Obviously, people aren't making the mistake doubting Arizona State, and I'll be curious to see if Sam Levitt can run it back. But here's my pick. They certainly have the most talent on their roster. Can Texas Tech put all these new pieces together that they went out and got during the offseason, much in part because of becoming an NIL juggernaut? If they can put it together and play well, I think Texas Tech is kind of my dark horse pick that could win the Big 12 because of the talent that they infused in the offseason.
I love that.
Joey McGuire is a friend of the program.
Sure is.
Here.
I married into a Texas Tech
way back,
80.
so I love your pick. Absolutely love your pick.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see. And I've never been to Lubbock. I cover a lot of SEC football and in college football season, but I'd love to get a little bit in the Big 12. We had the luxury of covering ASU and Iowa State in Dallas last year, or up in Arlington for the Big 12 title game, and that was so much fun. So I'm really curious to see if Texas Tech can get in the mix this year.
ESPN's Katie George with us here on 105 through the fan of the GBAG Nation. We did get a couple of texts wanting to ask about Colorado. What'd you think of Deion Sanders? What caught your eye there? And their quarterback situation. Did you get a feel for maybe where they might be leaning?
Yeah, I didn't get a full sense, but I got to talk to Caden Salter, and I was impressed with him. He seems very calm, laid-back guy. You wonder, like, when he steps on the field, is he able to kind of turn it on, right, from a competitive standpoint? I think you certainly see that in his film. I think that, he and Juju are a little bit different, Juju being the true freshman that's come in. They're different in style. I think Juju's a little bit more of a pocket passer, and I think that Caden has the ability to run, so he presents that dual threat, quarterback situation. I'm curious to see if Deion and Pat Shurmur will employ a two-quarterback system, which then will allow Juju to get comfortable right? You know, I think it takes guys time, certainly, to feel themselves out at the college game. Because I don't know about you guys, but in terms of like, I'm out here at Summer League, I think there's certainly a difference from college to the NBA level, and all these players out here will tell you that. But I think the most drastic difference for a sport is college football from high school, right? Like, that is a massive, massive jump for these guys. And so I think the sense I got is they'll start with Caden Salter with the idea that eventually Juju will take over sometime in the season once he gets comfortable.
Katie, you mentioned the SEC games that you have covered. Is there an SEC game day experience that you have that is maybe set above the rest?
Oh, gosh, that's such a tough question.
I know.
You don't upset anybody.
I do put you in a bad place with this question.
Please say LSU because you're talking to a grad here.
Well, okay, so it was presented to me that Death Valley was going to be above and beyond the best atmosphere in the SEC. And I have to say, I love doing night games at Death Valley. But because it was so hyped to me, I think it was oversold. Like, they told me I wasn't even going to be able to hear myself think. And there are moments, certainly. There's moments that you can't, and it's so loud. But I thought it was going to be a little louder, is what I was going to say. Gainesville, when Florida's good, Gainesville, I don't love the stadium itself, but when it's packed and rocking, that's a really cool environment. And I'll tell you that somebody that doesn't get a lot of hype, Auburn on a night game, Saturday night in the fall, Auburn's just such a cool place to visit, like great restaurants. It's such a stunning campus. The fans do such a great job. I like Jordan-Hare a lot. And so I always tell people, like, don't count out somewhere like Auburn. But there are so many great atmospheres. And it's not just the SEC, right? Like, I've done a white out at, Happy Valley up at Penn State. Like, that was an incredible scene. When people ask me, like, my favorite sport, I'm like, you can't top college football environments. They're just unbelievable. So I'm very blessed in getting to cover it.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say you're going to evaluate these stadiums on how much sweat you have to wipe out of your eyes.
Oh, my God.
Before you, like, I can imagine, like, you talk about the swamp and Baton Rouge and those games and how humid and bad they are. My gosh.
It's so humid. Last year, they gave me, like, a thermometer, where you can, like, put it in the ground.
Sure.
And it was funny. I was doing a pre-kick interview with Brian Kelly, and over where I was standing in the grass, it was about like 94, 95 degrees, right? But then I went into the team box to go interview Brian, and the team boxes are turf because they don't want to tear it up with all their cleats, which I get. But I said to Brian, I was like, I measured it right before we came on. I said, this is registering at 130 degrees hotter on the turf than compared to where I was just a couple feet over on the grass. And he was like, yeah, we might need to look at this then and just make it all grass. He was like, because that's ridiculous. And I'm like, yeah, playing down in Baton Rouge is no joke come early September.
Katie.
Yeah, well, Katie, not everybody can go to Louisville and be at a smart school. You know what I'm saying? I mean, some of us have to go to Baton Rouge.
Baby.
Yeah, that's right.
58 degrees every single day in the gym.
Don't have to worry about the heat there. Thank you so much. I know you've been super busy. You're absolutely crushing. We can't wait to watch tomorrow Mavs Spurs on ESPN, and hopefully we can catch up with you for college football this upcoming season.
Yeah, that sounds great. I appreciate you guys having me. Have a great show.